My name is Grace Nyakoy. I am an audit director here at LSC OIG. Presenting with me today is my colleague, Carol Bates, who is an audit manager here with the OIG. Carol is also the project manager of the IT assessment, the IT Vulnerability Assessments Project. Our topic today is Stay Safe, Protect Your IT Systems from Vulnerabilities. Why are we here? LSC OIG partners with a vendor to assess grantees' IT systems for vulnerabilities. All the assessments conducted in the last contract year, that is June 2022 through March 2023, found that all the 10 grantee systems had an unacceptable vulnerability security rating score. During this presentation, we'll summarize our findings. We'll talk about what we found to be the most common security vulnerabilities. We'll also share recommendations for you to secure your systems. This information was also shared with you in our 2023 summary report that was issued on September 19th. We hope that you use this information to coordinate a strategy and plan of action with your IT team. We'll also include the slides that we're using in the chat so that you can follow along and use for future reference. So here's an overview of what we'll cover today. We'll start off briefly by talking about our mission and background of the ITVA program. Then we'll dive into what we found, what we recommend, and provide you some resources to fall back on. The OIG's mission is to promote economy, efficiency, and effectiveness in LSC and LSC grantees, operations, and prevent and detect fraud, waste, and abuse. Simply said, we assure, advise, and anticipate. One of the ways we accomplish our mission of preventing fraud is by assisting our LSC grantees to stay safe by providing the vulnerability assessment service. Through these assessments, we provide assurance by assisting grantees understand ways to secure their internal and external networks and to gauge existing weaknesses. We also advise grantees by providing them quick fix solutions and long-term recommendations, which, if implemented, will strengthen their IT posture and afford the program's continued vigilance. The ultimate goal of this program is to anticipate and prevent IT security incidents that could cause or interrupt the grantee's ability to provide timely and effective legal aid or create embarrassing reputational risks. The assessments identify vulnerabilities both outside and within the grantee's networks that could compromise or cause distraction to the systems and data. The assessments also determine whether grantees' networks are using or following IT security best practices. And at the end of these assessments, we provide the grantees with recommendations to reduce the identified risks. For some background, this program began in 2016. The assessments are performed by a contractor hired by the OIG. Currently, Securicon LLC performs the ITVAs. To date, we've performed assessments on 36 grantees. Between 2016 and 2020, the grantees who were assessed then volunteered into the program. The program was a success and grantees were able to identify areas of weaknesses in their networks and resolve them. Starting in 2021, the grantees have been selected through a risk-based assessment process. At the end of each assessment, grantees are issued with a report, and the findings presented in the report are also shared with them during an exit conference where the grantee management, our office, and Securicon attend the exit conference as well. At the end of every contract year, we issue a report prepared by our contractor that summarizes these ITVA results. Today's presentation is focused on the results of the 10 assessments performed between June 2022 and March 2023. which were also presented in the report issued in September, early September, to be exact, September 19th, 2023. The results of these assessments were consistent with past findings, and even though the assessed grantees varied in their IT security postures, all the 10 grantees had an unacceptable vulnerability security rating score. This is the lowest possible security rating. Therefore, the OIG wants to strongly urge all grantees to review our ITVA recommendations and best practices and make plans to implement them. And now I'll turn it over to Carol, who will take us through the results, recommendations, and best practices.
Thank you, Grace. When Securicon issues its reports, the vulnerabilities are presented in 4 security levels: critical, high, medium, and low. Assigning the severity is based on Securicon's experience and expertise, and they use the matrix, which is shown on this slide. The severity level depends on how likely a vulnerability will be exploited and the potential impact on the organization's operation and reputation. Critical vulnerabilities are likely to be exploited and severely impacts operations. High vulnerabilities are less likely to be exploited and would seriously impact operations. In this presentation, we will discuss the common critical and high vulnerabilities found from the most recent assessments. The critical vulnerabilities discovered at each grantee were internal to the network environment and resulted from unpatched or outdated operating systems and applications. Almost every grantee that was assessed had multiple systems missing Microsoft or other third-party software updates. Without these updates, your IT software may no longer receive vendor support or may no longer receive patches with critical security updates. The high vulnerabilities are listed on this slide. These are 3 protocols that are used to help manage and monitor IT networks. Securing these protocols will improve network security. We'd like to note that any severity level vulnerability can be exploited if a bad actor gets inside the network. An employee clicking on a malicious link in a phishing email can let an attacker into the system. And recent information issued by the Council of Inspectors General Cybersecurity Committee newsletter noted that human element contributes to 74% of data breaches. So keeping up with employee cybersecurity training is also recommended. Moving along to how to fix recommendations, we provide immediate recommendations, which are quick fixes to remediate vulnerabilities. The quick fix recommendations listed on this slide can be summarized as securing the IT environment, patch and update software, delete any unused or unneeded software, close unneeded ports that are open, and secure protocols. Immediate recommendations also include segmenting the IT environment or divide the network into subnetworks and control how traffic flows among the segments. This measure reduces the attack surface should a bad actor get into the system. Also recommended is to take an inventory and document the network architecture. Know what devices belong on the network and disable any rogue devices. Long-term or strategic recommendations to remediate vulnerabilities continue the emphasis on taking proactive measures. Regularly conduct vulnerability scanning and remediate any vulnerabilities that are found. Once software is up to date and patched, the recommendation is to implement a comprehensive patch management program to keep software patched and up to date. We also recommend that all communication at the external management interfaces are monitored. Concluding our long-term recommendations to remediate vulnerabilities, if possible, employ zero trust architecture. Zero trust architecture acknowledges the need to end reliance on single authentication. So, for example, don't just have a person put in their ID and password, require another form of authorization. Take inventory regularly and keep network diagrams up to date. And a recommendation is to take extra precautions for those organizations that allow personnel to bring their own devices, which is also called BYOD, or bring your own device. One never knows what is coming along with those devices when they log into a network. So separating BYOD devices from other network devices is a recommendation. Moving on to best practices, and the best practices in the annual report reinforce and repeat recommendations. This slide and the next list best practices to improve your cybersecurity posture. Add layers of security. Give employees the privilege needed to accomplish their mission, but not more. These best practices are defensive measures to stay ahead of attackers and secure your IT environment. I'd like to add some information about backup and recovery. An LSC grantee received a ransomware attack. The grantee had system backups and a recovery plan in place. The grantee was quickly up and running without paying ransom. So this is proof that these best practices do work. Best practices continued, including use all available technology to add additional layers of security, such as those listed on this slide. And as a reminder to our participants, the slides are available in the chat, so please download them and use this information as a resource. Grace, I'll turn the presentation back to you.
Thanks, Carol. And that brings us to the end of the presentation. Hopefully this information has been beneficial to you. Some of the key takeaways from our assessments were that LSC grantee networks generally did not have a significant exposure from outside the network. This is to say that the vulnerabilities that can be exploited were found internal to the network. The most common critical vulnerability that we found was that grantees had outdated operating systems and applications and unpatched or outdated software. The good news is that these vulnerabilities can be remediated. So be proactive to keep your IT environment secure. On this last slide, we have some resources for you. We If you would like to have an ITVA, please email us at this address, audits@oig.lsc.gov. We've also put some information below to help keep your grantee IT system safe, so please refer to them. They're on our website and on LSC website. Thank you very much, and we can take questions now if there are any in the chat.
So we do have one. You can let us know if this might be something we might have to circle back on, but Juan writes, in the insecure printer configurations severity rating of the report, the finding mentions that printers were observed on the same network as workstations. Are you suggesting that printers should be in their own VLAN? And he can see the case for a large network and many printers, but what about when the office is small and there's only one printer? I know that's a pretty technical question, but is there anything you guys can offer for that?
I will chime in. Excellent question. And yes, we saw printers on their own network. And what we would recommend is, to the extent possible, segment them. But we would like to circle back with you with a more detailed answer. So if you can put your name into the audits@oig.lsc.gov and just say, hey, I had the printer question, we'll be sure to get back with you.
Thank you, Carol. We don't have any other questions in the chat, but if anyone had any that they would actually like to unmute and ask, you're welcome to do that as well. Well, and if not, I will turn it back to Grace and Carol.
Well, thank you, everyone. Seeing that there are no more questions and we've ended a little early, we are happy to give you back half an hour of your time. Thank you very much for being here with us. I do see one question.
Yes, it actually just popped through. We'll plug this one in right quick. The question is, what kind of additional funding is being provided to reinforce the networks from vulnerabilities?
Portia, would you like me to take that?
Sure.
Okay. We are LSC, Office of Inspector General. We do not provide funding to LSC grantees. That is what the Legal Services Corporation does. So we suggest that perhaps you ask LSC if there is the option to provide additional funding for IT security. LSC also received a copy of our presentation, so they're probably aware that people would like to know the answer to this question as well.
Thank you, Carol. And we actually have someone who's chiming in. Allison Paul says that LSC provides grants, as we know, for cybersecurity audits through the TIG program. So that's a nice reminder. And they also
thank you, Allison.
Grants. Yes, thank you. I believe that is the last of the questions. We provided a copy of the presentation in the chat as well, and we hope to provide a link to the presentation. We'll send a blast later on.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Have a good afternoon.